welcome back. It is the Vegas Take Sharp and Shapiro. So glad you could join us on a Friday. As you know, these are tough subjects that we talk about on this show: race relations, systemic racism in this country. But I really do enjoy talking to leaders, whether they're politicians or, quite frankly, football coaches. But there are people in this community that have done a lot of good things for a lot of people. And certainly one of those people is former Bishop Gorman and UNLV head football coach Tony Sanchez, who has led a lot of young men, not just on the football field, but in life. And I really do appreciate him taking some time to join us right now. Coach Tony Sanchez. Tony, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm doing good, guys. How you doing today?
Doing great.
Doing great, Coach. I want to read something you put up on social media, which I think it was great and really important. You said, quote, "I stand with all those outraged and saddened by the senseless and violent death of George Floyd. There is no place in our society for racism and injustice. As we confront such, I pray that we can peacefully and swiftly re-engage in meaningful conversations and actions that will lead to needed change in our country." And as I mentioned, I agree with you, Coach, as I mentioned, you've led a lot of people, minorities, people of all race, on the football field, but in life as well. And I know you still talk to a lot of those players that you coached. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, it's obviously it's a sad time right now in our country, and we're dealing with a lot of things that need to be addressed. And once everything simmers down a little bit, I really do believe that peacefully we need to engage in conversation about things that we can do to change certain culture so we can move forward in a positive direction. This country has grown so much in a short amount of time. When you look at the history of the United States and where we started and where we are now when it comes to race relations, we've done a tremendous job of moving forward, but it just shows that there's a lot of work still to be done. Being a football coach for as long as I have at the high school and collegiate level and working with the kids I have, the one thing that during this whole time I sat back and I just go, wow, I wish the entire country could just, join a team in a locker room for just one season. You walk in, you don't see color, you have a singular mission, and no matter what your background or where you came from, what you're raised for, your religion, your wealth, none of that really makes a difference. I mean, everybody learns to, and it doesn't always start off that way, but I tell you what, as the season evolves and as time evolves and people get to know each other for the men that they really are, there's a lot of respect that's gained, and they take that out with them into the world, and I pray that, more people get experience of that. You talk about systemic racism, and, part of it isn't that we live in a racist nation. I don't believe that, because I've met so many people that are just good to their core, but I think a lot of us, we may come together at work or in sports and such. When we go home, sometimes we go home to, segregated neighborhoods, neighborhoods that don't have the same, type of opportunities. And, and you talk about what is the change we need. We need more diversity in all of our communities. And I think the conversation needs to be had, and obviously we can continue to talk about what these events that led to this. But it's sad, but I've got a lot of hope because I know so many good people that believe that, something needs to be done in a positive way.
Sure, and we can talk about race, even relation to football. I mean, it comes to relation to really anything. But, as you know, Coach, Caleb Herring is a wonderful young man. He's a police officer now, former UNLV quarterback who led UNLV football to a bowl game, and he now is the color commentator. I know you know him well. So we had Caleb on the show a few days ago, and we talked to him about these very issues. And he said even as a football player, he was told over and over again by certain people, you'll never be a quarterback because you're black. We had Rush Limbaugh, who used to be on ESPN. He was fired for using that same sentiment, criticizing African Americans because they're black and they're quarterbacks. I mean, can you comment on that a little bit from your experience?
Yeah, that's just ignorant. I mean, it really is. I mean, I think when people say stuff like that, they just, literally, it's a lack of understanding. It's a form of ignorance. That's all it is. It's just a flat ignorant statement. I mean, if we want to take all the emotion out of it and just look at it, it's about skill set. If you possess certain skill sets, you have the aptitude to read a defense and to lead a team, then you can play quarterback, and I don't care what you look like. So, again, that's ridiculous. And then there's many people for a long time. I think that thing's gone away a long time ago. You look at the NFL, and there's a lot of successful African-American quarterbacks. I mean, even at UNLV, Armani Rogers at one time, he was Mount West Freshman of the Year. And we believed in him wholeheartedly. Never saw color. We just saw a great football player. So I think that most people are past that. If there's some that aren't, then they shouldn't be involved in the game.
Couldn't agree with you more. If you're just joining us, we're speaking with Coach Tony Sanchez, former UNLV head coach. Of course, Bishop Gorman did some great things there as the national high school coach of the year. So in dealing with, minorities and maybe those who have come from families, maybe they don't have the money and maybe they suffer from a financial standpoint, how have you been so successful and just able to not only have many of these great young men successful on the football field at such a young age, but then graduating, whether it was at UNLV or getting good grades at Bishop Gorman? How were you able to find the success to get them successful, not just on the football field, but off the football field?
Well, that's a great question. And one of the things that I've always been proud of is that we always put developing the person above the developing the player. I mean, the player is important, right? But I think if we don't involve the entire person, then we're not doing our jobs. And, obviously winning's a big part of it. But one of the things I'm proudest of is, you look at UNLV and, highest graduation rate, highest GPAs, all that stuff. At Gorman, we raised the GPA quite a bit. And when I was at Cal High, 5 years out of 6, we were the NCS, GPA champion. And, and it's not that they got good GPAs. The biggest thing is when you're talking to young men, and I don't care, young men or young women, I don't think it makes a difference. And when they know you're invested in them as a person, and there's going to be a life beyond just this game, and this game will give you the tools that you'll need to be successful in a family atmosphere, in a business setting, in a social setting, that it'll set a standard for you that you can apply to every single thing that you do, then I think players will buy in. They'll buy into like, wow, this person really does care about where I end up, not just where I'm at right now. It's not just the immediacy of, what's going to happen this fall or this coming up Saturday, but where I'll be 10 and 20 years from now. And I think once, they understand that, then they start valuing themselves and they start valuing things that maybe they didn't before they got there. And they start to realize the, education and, and hey, you got a free ATM card, man. If you're on a scholarship, I tell our kids all the time, all you got to do, man, is show up to class and you just, plug your ATM card in and it'll pay back later, Yeah. So that was always really big. We wanted to make sure that our guys graduated and they did the right things. And, and you're going to have mistakes here and there, and that's all part of it. Those are great teachable moments and learning moments. And let me tell you, not every day in a locker room or on a football field is rosy, even when it comes to the social aspect of it. But when things like this happen, it's a great opportunity to address it and teach lessons altogether.
No question. Coach, I have to get your reaction to Drew Brees because he's taking a lot of flack. As you know, Drew Brees went on social media and he talked about the flag and involved with people taking a knee. And Coach, my opinion is pretty simple, and of course I want to get yours. You could tell me if you disagree or agree with mine. My opinion is he used horrible judgment. First of all, the timing of it. You could not have had a worse time for a white football player with a bunch of African-American teammates to go on there and basically, denounce kneeling. I just thought it was horrible judgment. On the other side of things, I don't think it's fair for people to call him a racist either, because I don't think Drew Brees is a racist. I think he used horrible judgment, and I think it was bad timing. What do you say?
It's funny, when you guys call, hey, do you want to come on? I think there's a lot of people that don't want to go on and talk about stuff like this right now because they're afraid of putting their foot in their mouth. Everyone's so scared to say anything right now because they're afraid of what the reaction will be. And, I thought about it for a second, and I was like, you know what, sometimes you just got to get out there and, you hope you do a good job and speak from the heart. When I listen to Drew Brees, I have no doubt that he is a good person. I don't think he's a racist, and I don't think his teammates think he's a racist. I think there was outrage over what he said at the time that he did. So let's take a step back and listen to what I'm going to say on this because I've thought about this. I think Drew Brees was coming from a position where he had grandfathers that served, and he saw the sacrifices they meant, and I think he looked at the kneeling as people showing disrespect to soldiers under the flag. And I think that, a lot of the African Americans that struck right back, they're like, hey, this has nothing to do with us disrespecting soldiers or our country. This is us saying, hey, we are part of America too, and we've been excluded for way too long. So when we take a knee, we're saying we matter. Pay attention to us. That's what we're taking a knee for. So I think it's so important when everything is so hostile and so political and people's emotions are so high. sometimes we need to take a step back and we need to listen to what people are saying so that we can absorb where it's coming from before we get too reactionary. And I get it. I get both sides of it, and again, I think there's a time and a place for Drew to state his comments. I'm sure he was feeling strongly because of the things he was saying. People that, you just saw what happened to George Floyd. You saw what happened
Sure.
on Ahmaud Arbery. There's a lot of raw emotion going on right now that's totally understandable, and things need to be addressed. But I think these are the meaningful conversations that I was talking about. Let's talk about why it upsets you when people take a knee. Let's talk about why we're taking a knee. And I think sometimes we just see the action, and then we have reaction without any conversation.
Considering how big of a deal this became with Drew Brees and with how Laura Ingraham handled it with LeBron James and Drew Brees, and I believe that Laura Ingraham is racist myself, but do you think that the NFL will lift that ban on kneeling?
Oh, well, I think that you're going to see a lot of kneeling this year because of the climate that we're in right now, and then there's going to have to be a little bit more understanding. I get it. There's some hurt right now, and at the end of the day, the NFL needs to come together and they need to talk, through teams. They need to talk, through a league and where they stand. But I tell you what, more than us worrying about whether or not NFL players are taking a knee, let's really get to the heart of this. And let's talk about what we're going to do to create some change so we don't see these things anymore. My dad was a police officer for 31 years, 25 in Oakland, California, 6 as the chief of police in Pomona. I talked to him the other day, and he was so heartbroken and outraged over what occurred. He was just sick to his stomach, and he flat out said, what are we doing when it comes to, our reoccurring training and how are we doing with like our community policing and things like that. And, it's one of those deals where we know it, that overwhelming majority of police officers are great human beings.
Yep,
The overwhelming majority of people protesting are great human beings. There are bad actors in every organization, from news stations to football coaches to police forces but we have so much more good. We've got to start embracing the love and the good stuff that we have going on in our communities right now and work together to get to the heart of this so we don't see these things repeated.
Could not agree with you more, Tony. I think when you have a platform, a huge platform, like a Drew Brees, like a LeBron James, I think it comes with a tremendous amount of responsibility. And I think LeBron James' heart is in the right place. I think he's a decent man. But I want to ask you about one of the tweets he put out there after the Ahmaud Arbery situation that just took place a few weeks ago. And we've been still covering that case, which was a lynching, in my opinion. But LeBron James put out a tweet, and in that tweet he said that African Americans, when they leave their house, they all feel like they're being hunted. And that scared me when he said that. And I guess as a white person, maybe I'm not as credible as if you're an African American, and I understand that. But I don't believe that every single time an African American leaves their house or apartment, they think they're being hunted. Number one, it's not happening. Is there systemic racism? Absolutely. Is there injustice when it comes to police, like what took place in Minneapolis? Absolutely. I support Black Lives Matter. But I just don't think he used his platform in that situation the right way. I think he worded it the wrong way. And I think to have the position that African Americans are being hunted every time they leave their house, I just don't see that happening. What is your take on that situation?
Well, I didn't see the tweet, and I'm hearing this for the first time. I think that, if he feels that way, then I think that, again, this needs to be a conversation. I mean, is this the way that our young African Americans feel? And if they do, then you know what? Then we need to address it. We need to talk about why do they feel that way. What's occurring there? I mean, is this conversation happening between our community leaders and our law enforcement leaders? And then how are we addressing it there? I mean, I think those are the things that need to occur, because if that's a feeling, we can't discredit the feeling. I don't know. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. I was driving home from Tahoe. I don't know, about maybe it was before this whole thing, so maybe 4 months ago, and I got pulled over, and I got my first speeding ticket since college. So when I got pulled over, I never thought 1 minute about anything other than I wonder if he'll write me up or not.
Right.
And if you're from a different skin complexion, or if you're an African American, or if you're Latino, or do you have those feelings that officer walks up that, like, oh man, I wonder if this will get bad? I mean, if that's true, then that's sad, and what's caused that, right? So rather than, again, we got to be careful when we have platforms on the reactions that we create. At the same time, you have the right to say what you want. What I'm worried about in the community that I live in Las Vegas and the greater community, of the United States of America is this going to subside and we're going to forget and just move on? Or are we going to now talk about it and have conversations and then create specific things that we're going to do within our communities to alleviate some of these stresses on our people so that they can feel comfortable?
Sure. No question, Coach. And by the way, I couldn't agree with you more. These are respectful conversations that we all need to have no matter what the color of your skin is. We need to hear the other side and hear them out. So, Coach, obviously this was the main reason why I wanted to have you on to talk about these issues, and I know you're very passionate about it. If I can, I wanted to ask you one or two football questions, if you don't mind. I appreciate that, Coach, and I appreciate your time. As you know, there's a lot of people in Las Vegas, including us, that have a tremendous amount of respect for you. You've done so many good things for this community, you and your family. So this is my understanding. This is the first interview you've done since the UNLV situation, since what took place there. Is there anything at all that you want to say to the fans, that you want to say about what took place, that you want to say for the first time publicly about what took place at UNLV?
Oh, no, not really. It's in the past. I mean, it was a great run. I'm proud of everything we did and accomplished here, proud of how much we moved that program forward, and proud that, UNLV, they know what it's like to win the Cannon again, winning a couple more games here and there, and, and they have the facilities to move forward. So proud that we made a difference there. But time to turn the page and move to the next chapter.
Fair enough. So let's talk about that next chapter. There's a lot of people that are talking about, okay, well, where's Coach Sanchez going to go? Can you give us any insight into that? And obviously, I would imagine you have an agent, and I would imagine you'll be somewhere sooner than later. But can you give us, to the people out there that want to follow your career, what are you looking at right now? Can you give us any insight into that?
Yeah, well, I've talked to a couple of people. There's a couple of things that are hanging right there. We'll see if something, materializes here soon. Obviously the lockdown didn't help much. I mean, nobody was in their facilities or anything like that. And, there was no spring, so there was no chance to get out and, get around a bunch of guys. So we'll see what happens. There's a couple of conversations going on right now. It's got to be the right one, though. I mean, you don't have to jump on anything if it doesn't make sense, at least for this year. But hey, I want to coach. I'm itching to get back out there and get with the guys, and it'll be, like I said, it'll be, turning the page of a new chapter. Vegas has been so good to me. I mean, 11 great years, and I think we really, raised the level of just kind of awareness of football in Las Vegas and in Nevada. And now with the Raiders coming into town, it's going to explode. I mean, having an NFL team in town, I mean, there's nothing like it. It'll put a huge imprint on our community, and I think it'll be a real positive one. So excited for Las Vegas, again, having the Raiders come in. And, as far as I go, we'll see where that next stop is. But when that happens, we'd love to get back on and talk to you about it.
Have you had any conversations at all with Marcus Arroyo or the new coaching staff?
I have not.
Understood. Coach, let me just say this. We wish you the best of luck with wherever you go. You're a class act, man, and there's so many people in this town and throughout the country, quite frankly, that respect you. And I wanted to have you on to talk about race relations because, like I said, I think it's important. It's not just about winning football games. Yeah, that's important, especially at the college level. But you have paved the way for so many people of all different races succeeding off the field. So I guess my last question for you would be this, and leave on a really good note here. I would imagine you still talk to a lot of the players that you coached, not only at UNLV, but at Bishop Gorman. And what type of joy does it bring to you, Tony, to hear from your former players and how successful they are with their degrees and having families, what they're doing with their lives right now, and to know that you played a role in that? That's got to bring you a lot of happiness.
Well, that's the best part of the game, I mean, I've always said, how do you know you were successful? You don't know for about 20 years, because you can see what these guys are doing. And like yesterday, I was walking, I ran into Gio Fallo, who played for me at UNLV. He's still got a year to go. And saw him with his girlfriend. They have a little baby and stuff. And it was just, I mean, it's like we forgot all about the social distancing. We just hugged each other right away, And it was great to see him, I mean, all these guys that are off doing well. It makes you proud. But I tell you what, it's funny you talk about, these guys and the guys that I've helped. I've had a tremendous career. I mean, I go from being the head coach at Cal High to doing great things at Gorman to getting a chance to be a Division I football coach. These kids have paved the way for me to have an unbelievable career. So it goes both ways.
Well, you're a very modest guy, Coach. And by the way, we look forward to having you on again when you do get that job soon enough. I'm sure it'll be sooner than later. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world right now, but that's why we wanted to have you on to talk about it. Coach, can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us. We wish you the best of luck, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. Okay, Coach?
Absolutely. And I just want to say, hey, thoughts and prayers out there to, George Floyd's family, Ahmaud Arbery, everyone who's been negatively affected by this. We definitely need to see change. Also want to send out, prayers and thoughts for Shea Michelonis, our officer that was shot here this weekend, and officers all over the country. So just praying for everybody. I don't care if you're in law enforcement being negatively affected. We just need a lot more love in our country right now.
Very well said, Coach. I could not agree with you more. Thanks again for your time, man. Really do appreciate it, Tony. Thank you.
Take care, and people Las Vegas.
All right, you got it.
Thanks a lot, Tony.
I love that guy. You
know what? I was going to ask him the question before he said that he wants to get back into coaching. I was going to say, you know what, Tony? You're extremely well-spoken. You're extremely